The morning rush at Maple Grove Diner was louder than usual, but Maria Santos moved through it all with a calmness that came from years of experience. At 42, she had become the quiet heartbeat of the diner, the woman everyone relied on even when they didn't realize it. Her soft steps, her warm smile, her gentle voice, everything about her had a way of making people feel safe without ever trying. After her husband's sudden accident 3 years ago, Maria had learned to rebuild life one shift at a time. The diner wasn't just her workplace, it was her shelter, her routine, her little world where she knew exactly how to help people. She remembered everyone's favorite orders, who liked extra napkins, who needed silence, and who simply needed a kind word. But this Tuesday morning felt different from the second she walked in. She had already wiped table 6 3 times, adjusting the tiny ceramic vase she always kept there, a single daisy blooming inside it, her own small gesture of beauty. As she stepped back, something in the corner booth caught her attention. A very well-dressed man sat there, wearing a charcoal suit that spoke of wealth, power, and a world far beyond the diner's simple walls. His silver watch flashed under the lights every time he moved. Yet, despite his perfect appearance, his face held a kind of helplessness she recognized instantly. Across from him sat a little boy, maybe 8 years old, rocking softly, hands pressed over his ears as the noise of the breakfast crowd overwhelmed him. His dark hair fell messily over big brown eyes that darted around the room, searching for a sense of calm he couldn't find. Maria stopped mid-step, her heart squeezing. She had seen this before. Children like him weren't troubled. They were sensitive, special, needing understanding and gentle care. Her neighbor's grandson had been the same, and Maria had learned how small sounds, sudden movements, or too many voices could feel like a storm inside their minds. But the father, he looked utterly lost. His phone buzzed non-stop against the table, but he ignored it, torn between two worlds, one demanding his attention and one he loved too much to leave. Every time the boy rocked harder or hummed louder, the father's eyes filled with panic that only a parent understands. Maria drew in a slow breath. This wasn't a regular customer, and this wasn't a regular morning. As she approached the table with her practiced smile, she noticed the boy's humming soften just from her gentle presence. The father looked up at her, eyes tired but full of worry, as though silently begging for help he didn't know how to ask for. Maria felt it instantly, the moment where her whole day was about to change. And she didn't know yet that the man sitting before her wasn't just wealthy. He was one of the most powerful CEOs in the state. Nor did she know that the kindness she was about to offer would soon be witnessed in a way that would shock everyone, including him. Maria placed the coffee pot back on the counter, took a steady breath, and walked toward the corner booth with the same calmness she used when approaching frightened children. She had no idea who the man was, no clue that his decisions could shake entire companies. She only saw a father drowning in worry and a little boy searching for safety. As she approached, the boy's rocking slowed as if he somehow sensed her gentle energy. The father looked up, and Maria saw his expression shift from frustration to something softer, almost hopeful. "More coffee, gentlemen?" she asked with her kind smile. The little boy instantly stopped humming. His eyes peeked up at her through his lashes, shy yet curious, as if trying to decide if she was a threat or a friend. His small hands paused over the sugar packets he had arranged in precise, perfect lines. Maria lowered her voice the way she always did with children who needed calm, soft tones. "You like things neat, she said, glancing gently at the sugar packets. "You're doing a wonderful job. They're perfectly straight." The boy blinked, once, twice, and then gave the tiniest nod. It was the first sign of trust. His father's eyes widened. He usually doesn't react to strangers," he whispered. Maria simply smiled. He's not reacting to a stranger. He's reacting to someone who understands. She turned her attention to the boy again. How about some golden pancakes? Plain, no sauce, no seasoning, and the syrup on the side so you can use it only if you want. Or not at all. Completely your choice. The child's shoulders dropped in relief, and for the first time that morning, he looked calm. The father exhaled, a long, shaky breath, as if someone had just lifted a burden off his chest. "Thank you," he said softly, voice cracking. I'm Mitchell. This is Daniel." Maria hadn't needed the introduction. She had already guessed the name would be something classic, gentle, fitting for a child like him. "Well, Daniel," she said, kneeling slightly so she was at eye level, "your pancakes will be ready soon, and if the noise gets too loud, you let me know and I'll fix it, okay?" The boy gave another small nod. Mitchell stared at Maria like she was performing magic. "You have no idea how people usually react," he whispered. "Stares, complaints, sometimes even asking us to leave." Maria felt her heart crack. "There's nothing wrong with Daniel. He just experiences the world differently." Mitchell swallowed hard. For a moment, the confident CEO vanished, replaced by a father who looked tired, overwhelmed, and desperately grateful. Before Maria could respond, Daniel gently tugged her sleeve, a tiny, hesitant gesture, and pointed at his water glass. His unspoken message was clear. He trusted her. Maria smiled warmly. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll get you a fresh one." As she walked toward the kitchen, she felt eyes turning toward her, not from the crowd, but from Mitchell. His gaze followed her every step, full of relief and disbelief. He had come to the diner expecting a stressful morning. He had not expected compassion. He had not expected anyone to treat his son with patience. And he certainly didn't expect this waitress, this woman in a simple apron, to understand Daniel better than most therapists he had hired. But what no one knew, not yet, was that this small act of kindness would soon flip both their worlds upside down. Because Mitchell wasn't just any father. He was the billionaire CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the country. And what would happen in the next hour would stun everyone, including him. Maria returned with Daniel's fresh glass of water, holding it carefully so the ice wouldn't clink against the sides. She knew even small sounds could overwhelm a child like him. As she approached the table, she noticed Mitchell rubbing his temples, his phone buzzing nonstop beside him. The screen lit up with names of executives, board members, urgent meetings, the kind of responsibilities Maria had never known but could instantly sense were stealing this man's peace. When she placed the glass gently in front of Daniel, the boy didn't flinch. Instead, he looked at the water, then at Maria. And for the first time, he whispered a soft, "Thank you." Mitchell froze. It wasn't the words. Daniel rarely spoke. It was how he spoke them. Calm, unforced, trusting. Mitchell's voice shook. He never speaks to people he just met." Maria simply smiled. "Kids like Daniel don't speak to people they don't feel safe with. That's all." Mitchell looked at her like she had told him a secret he'd been trying to understand for years. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the kitchen, a tray of metal utensils falling. The sound ripped through the diner like a lightning bolt. Daniel's hands flew to his ears. His breathing quickened. His small body curled in on itself as panic surged through him. People around them turned to stare. Mitchell panicked. "Daniel, buddy, it's okay, look at me. Daniel, please." But Daniel couldn't look. His world was crashing over him like a wave too big to survive. Maria didn't hesitate. She moved faster than anyone. She slid into the booth beside Daniel, lowering herself to his level. She spoke softly, her words a steady anchor in the chaos. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe. Nothing is going to hurt you. Follow my breath, okay?" She inhaled slowly, audibly, peacefully. Daniel's trembling fingers clutched the fabric of her apron, searching for something to ground him. Maria kept breathing slowly, rhythmically, offering him a calm world to hold on to. Mitchell watched in complete shock. Maria placed her hand gently, not touching him, but close enough for him to feel her presence. "You're doing great, Daniel. You're so brave. Just breathe with me." Little by little, his shaking eased, his breath slowed, his fingers loosened. The storm passing over him began to fade. Mitchell was speechless. He had seen therapists, specialists, entire teams fail to calm Daniel during sensory overload, yet this woman, this stranger, calmed him in under a minute. The customers who had been staring awkwardly now whispered among themselves, clearly moved by what they witnessed. Maria looked up at Mitchell. "He just needs understanding, not fixing," Mitchell's voice cracked. "You have no idea how rare that is." Maria touched Daniel's hand softly. "You okay, sweetheart?" Daniel nodded. That single nod felt like a miracle. Mitchell watched his son, really watched, as if seeing him for the first time, without the lens of fear or frustration. Emotion filled his eyes, raw and unshielded. Mitchell cleared his throat, but the words still trembled. "I try so hard, I really do, but I feel like I'm failing him every day." Maria sat back slightly, her tone warm but firm. "You're not failing him, you're learning him, and that takes time." He blinked at her, surprised by the truth in her words. "You're doing better than you think," she added gently. No one had told Mitchell that. Not his staff, not his advisors, not even the expensive specialists he hired. But hearing it from a woman who had watched him for only 20 minutes felt like a lifeline. Mitchell suddenly noticed her hand, rough from work, gentle in spirit, resting on the table. He looked at Maria with a mixture of gratitude and fascination. "Maria," he breathed, "I don't know how you did that." She shrugged softly. "Kindness doesn't cost anything, but it changes everything." Daniel leaned against Maria's arm just slightly, in the quietest sign of trust. Mitchell's eyes widened at the sight. This simple diner waitress had connected with his son in a way no one else had. He didn't know it yet, but this moment was going to change all their lives. The diner had returned to its usual rhythm, but to Maria, the world around her felt strangely quieter, as if something had shifted. Daniel was now tracing little circles on the table with his finger, calm and content, his earlier panic melting into serenity. Mitchell watched him carefully, his expression softening in a way that made Maria's heart ache. For the first time, she saw not a billionaire, not a CEO, but a father who had been fighting battles no one else could see. When Daniel leaned lightly against Maria again, Mitchell froze, his breath catching. He's never done that," Mitchell whispered, barely able to believe it. "He doesn't lean on anyone, not even me sometimes." Maria brushed a stray curl from Daniel's forehead with the gentleness of a mother. "Children sense a safe heart," she said quietly. "It has nothing to do with roles or money, just connection." Mitchell swallowed hard. His eyes glistened. This woman, who was a stranger an hour ago, had given his son peace he searched for years. Mitchell exhaled deeply, the weight of years sliding off his shoulders. "Daniel's mom left when he was 3, he said slowly. She said she couldn't handle his needs." Maria's chest tightened. The pain in his voice was unmistakable, a man who had been forced to carry heartbreak alone. "I've raised him on my own," he continued. "Between board meetings, crisis calls, doctors, the world just never slows down, not for him, not for me." He let out a broken little laugh. "I'm running a billion-dollar empire, Maria, but I can't even calm my own son when he needs me most." Maria shook her head firmly. "Love isn't measured by how perfect you are, it's measured by how hard you try." Mitchell looked at her like no one had ever spoken to him like that before. Daniel suddenly reached toward Maria again, touching the bracelet on her wrist. A simple wooden bead bracelet her daughter had made years ago. "It's pretty," Daniel murmured. A gasp escaped Mitchell. He spoke again, twice in one day. Maria smiled warmly. He feels heard, and when a child feels understood, they open like sunlight. Mitchell stared at her, really stared, as if trying to memorize the grace she carried so effortlessly. The diner's door chimed as someone walked out, but neither of them moved. The moment felt suspended in time. Mitchell cleared his throat, suddenly uneasy. Maria, can I ask you something? She tilted her head. Of course. I could really use someone who understands him the way you do, someone patient, someone kind, someone who doesn't rush him, someone who actually sees him. Maria blinked, unsure where he was heading. Mitchell took a deep breath. I want to hire you. Maria nearly dropped the napkin she was folding. Hire me, she stammered. Yes, Mitchell said slowly. As Daniel's caretaker, personal support, full-time, whatever title you want. Maria shook her head quickly. Sir, I'm just a diner waitress. You're not just anything, Mitchell interrupted softly. You're the first person who has brought my son peace in years. Maria's eyes flickered with uncertainty. I can't leave the diner. It's my income, and my daughter. Mitchell raised a hand gently. I'll double your current salary. No, triple it. You'll still have time with your daughter. I'll arrange transportation, a flexible schedule, anything you need. Maria stared at him, stunned, silent. It wasn't the money that overwhelmed her. It was the sincerity in his voice, the desperation of a man who had nowhere else to turn. A few customers subtly leaned closer, pretending not to eavesdrop, but it didn't matter. What they were witnessing was extraordinary. A billionaire CEO offering a life-changing job to a woman who had saved his son simply by being herself. Maria pressed her hand to her chest, her emotions swirling. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Mitchell leaned forward, his voice warm and pleading. Just say you'll think about it. Maria looked down at Daniel, who was now gently tapping her hand, a silent request for connection. She smiled softly, brushing his fingers. I'll think about it, she said. Mitchell exhaled, relief washing over him like a tide. For the first time that morning, hope bloomed inside him, hope that this woman might be the answer he'd been searching for. The rest of the diner seemed to fade into a soft blur as Maria stood quietly beside the booth, unsure of what to do next. Mitchell's offer lingered in the air like a weight she wasn't prepared to carry. For years, she had lived one day at a time, managing bills, double shifts, and her daughter's school fees with nothing but hard work and faith. The idea of leaving the safe little world of Maple Grove Diner felt impossible, yet the sincerity in Mitchell's voice made her heart flutter with a mixture of fear and hope. She watched him reach over to wipe a crumb off Daniel's cheek, his hand trembling ever so slightly, as if he was terrified of doing the wrong thing. Daniel leaned into the touch, but only for a moment before turning his attention back to a pattern he was drawing on his napkin. The boy was peaceful again, settled, calm, and Maria knew deep in her bones that the moment could not be ignored. Something bigger than all of them was unfolding here. Mitchell finally broke the silence, his voice lower now, almost hesitant, as though he was afraid she might vanish if he spoke too loudly. I know I surprised you, he said, and I know you have your own world, your own responsibilities. I didn't mean to complicate anything. Maria swallowed, unsure how to respond. The truth was, her life had been nothing but struggles and compromises since her husband's accident. She had learned to never hope for too much, to never believe that a sudden stroke of good fortune could truly be real. But watching Daniel reach again for her hand, his small fingers brushing against hers with an innocence that made her chest ache, she began to see the situation differently. This wasn't about money or escape. This was about a child who trusted her without question, something that couldn't be bought or manufactured. Mitchell rubbed the back of his neck, clearly stressed. I've tried everything, Maria, he continued quietly. Specialists, elite nannies, therapists, educators, they all have credentials, experience, strategies, but they don't see him, not the way you do. Maria felt her throat tighten. She wasn't sure she deserved such praise. She had no formal training, no degrees, no certifications. All she had was instinct, patience, and a heart that had always understood children better than adults. She looked at Mitchell, and for the first time, she saw beyond the suit, the wealth, the power. She saw a man who had been carrying fear alone for years, terrified of failing the one person who mattered most. She glanced at Daniel again, who was now quietly humming while stacking sugar packets in neat, satisfying lines. There was something soothing about his presence, something pure, something that made her feel needed in a way she hadn't felt in years. She took a slow breath. "I'm not saying no," she finally whispered. "But this is not a small decision. I have my daughter, my home, my routine. I can't just walk away from everything overnight." Mitchell nodded immediately, as if he had expected that answer. "I don't need overnight," he replied. "I don't need anything right now except your willingness to consider it. Take your time, think it through. Let me show you that I'm not trying to take you away from your life. I just want to make all our lives easier." Maria looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of her apron. She wasn't used to a world where people made gentle promises and meant them. She wasn't used to a world where opportunities weren't traps. But Mitchell's eyes held no manipulation, no pushiness, just exhaustion, hope, and something unexpectedly tender. For the first time in a long time, Maria felt the quiet possibility of a future that wasn't filled with constant worry, and that thought alone both frightened and thrilled her. Before she could respond, Daniel slid out of the booth without warning and wrapped his small arms around her waist, pressing his cheek into her stomach. The entire diner froze. Even Mitchell's breath caught. Daniel's affection was rare, spontaneous gestures almost non-existent. Maria placed a gentle hand on his back, her heart melting. Mitchell stared at them with a mixture of awe and disbelief, his emotions raw and unguarded. At that moment, Maria understood something clearly. Whatever decision she made next would change all of their lives forever. When Daniel finally pulled away, Maria looked at Mitchell with soft but steady eyes. "I just need time," she whispered. Mitchell nodded again, his voice barely above a breath. "Take all the time you need," he said. But even as he spoke, Maria sensed that this was only the beginning, that the real change was still on its way, waiting just beyond the edge of the morning rush. The next morning, Maria woke up before her alarm, the offer from Mitchell echoing in her mind like a persistent whisper she couldn't shake off. She stood in her small kitchen, waiting for the kettle to boil, staring at the faded photo of her late husband pinned to the fridge. His warm smile and the way he used to say, "You deserve more, Maria," made her chest ache. She had never believed him fully, not because she lacked confidence, but because life had taught her early that good things rarely stayed. Still, after years of burying her own dreams beneath bills and responsibilities, something in her heart stirred, a feeling she had thought she'd lost forever: hope. The kettle whistled loudly, snapping her back to reality. She made tea, sat at the cluttered dining table, and stared at the stack of unpaid medical bills. A heavy sigh escaped her lips. Maybe Mitchell's offer wasn't a fantasy. Maybe it was a door she had been too afraid to open. But just as quickly as hope bloomed, fear followed. If she left the diner, what would happen if it all went wrong? What if she failed? What if Daniel's progress was just a coincidence, and not because of her? What if she disappointed everyone, including herself? Her daughter, Sophia, wandered into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. "You're up early," she mumbled. Maria forced a smile and poured her tea into a cup. She debated whether to tell her anything, but the truth slipped out in a soft, trembling breath. "Sweetheart, I got offered a new job yesterday." Sophia blinked, suddenly awake. "A job? Doing what?" Maria hesitated. Helping someone. A little boy who needs special care. Sophia studied her mother, confusion melting into curiosity. Is it good? She asked. Better than the diner? Maria's heart tightened. Better in ways I'm scared to believe. Sophia leaned on the counter, her expression thoughtful. Mom, you always tell me not to be scared of new things. You say the right things come at the right time. Maybe this is yours. The simplicity of her daughter's words struck her harder than she expected. Maybe she wasn't the only one who needed a change. By the time she arrived at Maple Grove Diner, her stomach churned with nerves. The bell above the door chimed, the familiar scent of coffee hugging her like an old friend. Everything looked the same, the checkered tile, the faded booths, the cluttered counter. But for the first time in decades, Maria saw not comfort, but limits. She watched the morning crowd shuffle in, tired workers, truck drivers, elderly couples, all with their routine, all unchanged. Her life had been the same rhythm for so long that she'd forgotten there could be other melodies. She tied her apron tightly, breathing in deeply, just to steady herself. When Mitchell walked in exactly at 9:03 a.m., wearing a simple black sweater instead of a suit, she knew the conversation wasn't avoidable anymore. He looked different today, softer, unsure, almost nervous. Daniel held his hand, quietly tapping his fingers against Mitchell's palm in a pattern that seemed soothing to him. When Daniel saw Maria, his entire face lifted with silent joy. He let go of his father's hand and hurried toward her, stopping only when he reached her apron, where he gently pressed his forehead against her arm. Maria felt her breath catch. That small gesture made all her fear crumble. Mitchell approached slowly, his voice quiet and sincere. Maria? I didn't sleep last night. I kept thinking maybe I pushed too hard. She shook her head gently. You didn't. He exhaled with visible relief. Before she could lose her courage, Maria stepped aside and guided them to a booth. Daniel slid in instantly, humming lightly while arranging the salt and pepper shakers into perfect alignment. Mitchell watched him with tender eyes, then turned to her. Whatever you decide, he said softly, I want you to know that yesterday you gave me more peace in a few minutes than I've had in years. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of his words settling deep in her soul. When she opened them again, the decision was already made. I'll do it, she whispered. Mitchell froze. You will? She nodded, her voice trembling but firm. Yes, I'll take the job. I'll help Daniel. I'll try. The relief in Mitchell's face was unlike anything she had seen. Pure, overwhelming gratitude. But what happened next stunned even Maria. Daniel looked up, reached across the table, and placed his small hand gently on hers. His touch was soft but intentional, as though he understood the moment better than anyone. Mitchell's eyes glistened, his throat tightening with emotion he didn't hide. Thank you, he whispered. You've just changed our lives. Maria swallowed hard, a mix of fear and joy flooding her chest. She realized then that she wasn't just stepping into a job, she was stepping into a purpose she didn't know she had been waiting for. And as Daniel continued humming, completely calm in her presence, she understood something else. Sometimes life doesn't give second chances. Sometimes it gives a brand new beginning disguised as a small act of kindness. She untied her apron for the last time later that day, folding it quietly and placing it on the counter. The diner buzzed around her, unaware that a chapter had just closed. When she walked outside, Mitchell and Daniel were waiting by the car. The cold breeze brushed her face, but her heart felt warm, full, ready. Mitchell extended his hand to guide her in, but she smiled and walked on her own. Daniel climbed into the back seat, leaving a space for her beside him. When she sat down, he leaned gently against her shoulder, and Maria felt tears rise to her eyes. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself. A new journey had begun, one written not in fear or loss, but in unexpected grace. And as the car pulled away from the diner she had called home for almost 20 years, Maria realized something she had forgotten. Sometimes, life waits until you're completely broken before giving you exactly what you were always meant for.